start the list of things wrong with this car. For starters, I didn't start worth a crap. Probably took me 2 minutes to get it to actually start after cranking it up on the trailer. After that, I made the mistake of closing the door and was locked inside the car. Luckily, the window at least rolls down because I couldn't get either door to open from the inside. So we got little door poppers here because of the shaved door handles. Nothing for the driver's side. That side clicks, but I can't get the door open. And it doesn't seem to be any part of that switch, it's just stuck. But at least the power windows work. Oh, well, I guess the window came down, now it doesn't go up. Oh geez, I really could have been trapped in this thing. That side works. Okay, well, we're gonna call that getting lucky today. But, I don't know, as you can see, it's a pretty decent interior. I mean, somebody took the time to do a pretty nice job in this thing. Other than this super ugly steering column that they just slapped in here. So, this car is very weird. It was like everything was done to make it pretty, and then everything mechanical was just ignored. Or just completely, you know, I don't know. Or it was done poorly, let's put it that way. So, I don't know, I'm gonna hose this thing off because there's probably road salt all over it. And we'll get it in the garage. Just a crusty old small block. Certainly a lot of room for improvements on this car, which is why we're doing all this swapping of parts. And other than a few little cleanup items on the Vette, it's time to start taking the stuff out of the 50. This is probably going to actually be more of a pain in the butt than the Vette was, just because the engine's got to come out the top. I'm sure the transmission will need to come out the back on the bottom, because I don't want to take the whole front clip off of this thing if I don't have to. And then the suspension stuff's all got to come out from the bottom. Luckily, I mean, being a straight axle in the back and leafs, that'll be pretty easy. Starting to take the 50 apart, and I want to take a quick second to show you what not to do when wiring up electric fans. So these big thick wires were going into this water port sensor, except that's probably not a sensor, it's probably a switch, which means that this is straight power to go to the fan. It goes over into all this garbage. It comes down here, and then I'm like, what the F is this? It's like a rheostat thing. And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, wait, that's a temperature probe. And that probe is just stuck in behind the fan. These probes are meant to poke in through the fins so they can get a proper temperature reading. That is definitely not going to get a proper temperature reading, and it's going to be basically cold the entire time. What the heck? Oh yeah, and let's talk about never use house nuts in the wiring. Come on now. They're not even good for house nuts. Don't do it, people. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Got another gem for you, people. Do you suppose it's safe driving down the road when your steering is not tight and you've got all these U-joints in it? Yeah, just a little bit sloppy, huh? Chrome valve covers. That's at least 100 horsepower. Oh shit! Think we should disconnect the ground to the block? They already disconnected the ground to the block. Alright, just about to start pulling the engine and transmission out. I've been thinking that I need to separate them. However, I'm kind of changing my plan on that because I didn't want to take the front off. However, this looks like it might be just like 2 bolts back here, 3 up here, and maybe another 1 or 2 here, and I can pull this whole front center section out. And the scary thing is I just really kind of looked at it, but there is no actual bumper to the front of this car. It's only just the sheet metal on the front. If this thing got in an accident, it'd easily just smash right up to the engine. We're gonna have to do something about that. And since I'm already looking at doing the Corvette in the front, I'm glad I didn't cut these frame horns off because I might be able to just make use of this, chop it, plate it, put a bowl hole on there, and then I'll use my bender to bend up actual proper like bash bar for the front, so at least there's some real bumper support. But if I pull that off, and then I can get access in here a lot easier, I can probably just figure out where I'm going to chop the frame at on each side, and for the time being I can just pull the engine and transmission out this way, which probably save me some time and transmission fluid all over the floor. Ooh yeah, look at this sweet exhaust. And how about them hangers? Today I'm going to work on cleaning up this engine bay and just getting a bunch of stuff out of the way so that we can begin to work on the front suspension swap and maybe get the engine and transmission in here to kind of see where we can start getting things lined up that's going to work. Big thing is just got to clean everything out of here. I already know I don't want to deal with all of these haphazard wires from previous owners, and just the way a lot of it was done, it just wasn't thought out very well. Like our transmission speed sensors run through this hole down here that I can't pull it back through, so I'm gonna have to go in and unhook it from the board of the Dakota Digital in order to backfeed the whole thing, because that's just a terrible place to run it. All of this going on where it ends up all over the top of the engine bay, I don't like that either, and just separate wires hanging out. We're just gonna scrap all of that and start from scratch. We'll just get a brand new aftermarket harness, and I'll be able to route everything where I can keep it nice and clean, you know, braid the wires together, so that's good. Up in the front here also, like the markers or turn signal lights, they were hardwired straight into the light. I had to cut them to be able to remove the front bumper. I mean, really that should have some kind of push connection there to be able to work on the car. And I don't know where the rest of this, they got all these closeout panels that the previous owner made, which actually these ones up here that close out around the radiator are good. If you've seen my other video on keeping a classic car cool, that's a very important part of actually making sure air goes through your radiator. So I'm glad that they did that, but then they also have closeout panels like off to the sides, and then there's all of these wires just passing through grommets all over the place, and it's just way more complicated than it really needs to be, and there's got to be a better way to tuck these wires. We've also got things like the transmission lines. These are probably okay to reuse and stuff. However, it's like there's just this heavy rubber in places that's kind of acting as a closeout panel, but it's also super ugly, and it'll just be easier to work on everything like if this is out of the way. I mean, these hoses kind of suck, but then now I gotta get under the dash and find the heater core and unhook that stuff, and then we've got vacuum lines, one with a hookup, one that's dead end. Like, I'm gonna have to figure out what a bunch of this stuff is so that we can clean it up and either make it better or get rid of it completely. And here's another issue that I'm going to be dealing with is a lot of these closeout panels that whoever fabricated beforehand is because they cut away a whole bunch of rusty spots before, and you can see it's just pitted through in places. Like, these inner fenders are kind of freaking hacked up anyway. The driver's side's in slightly better shape, but of course, you know, for me to have access down here to remove the suspension, it's right over that area. I would prefer not to have to pull the entire front clip, because, you know, trying to align the body and everything else again. I mean, not that it's not doable, it's just if I don't have to do it, why make extra work for myself? But I'm just looking at how these things are. I know the Corvette suspension stuff's going to be out here a little further, so I'm going to have access down in here anyway. And I'm just thinking that if I went and cut somewhere up here, I'd have almost a pretty straight line where I could just make a new actual sheet metal piece that's a single piece then, instead of patches on patches on patches and pieces of rubber slapped over the top like what was on here. So, and absolute worst case scenario is I could definitely do a full like a rear wheel tub kind of thing for the front wheels, just like I did on my race car. Well, things are getting better under the hood. However, the situation has devolved. And the more we take apart, the worse it looks. I decided to remove the front suspension dropout assembly off of the Vette side and totally discard the frame. Trying to get that lined up underneath the 50 now, and I need no axle center line. I just measured about this height on the wheel well, and pick that as far as center, and then try to line up the laser. As you can see, the arch is different a little bit in the front and the back, so I really can't use that as a solid reference way down at the bottom. So I went up high enough there that I felt the arch was about the same. Across the car, it seems to be pretty close, but depending on what you measure, it's way off. And that's just part of working with really old cars. Right now, I'll just show you. So if I measure from the flat plane of where the headlight back to where I have axle center line marked, it is 3/4 of an inch, no, 3/8 of an inch difference side to side, which is like, holy cow, that's a lot. However, you can see as it crosses the factory frame here, that's pretty even. If I measure from the front base plate of the frame rail back, it's about 1/8 of an inch different. If I measure from the edge of this bolt hole and that bolt hole, they're within a 1/16. And back there we can see somebody cut the transmission cross member. If I sit against that flat on both sides and measure up, it's within a 1/16. So a 1/16 would be pretty good considering this. So that tells me that the body itself is not exactly symmetrical side to side. However, the door gaps are nice side to side. So really that's just manufacturing of the old bodies. And that's just something you're gonna have to work around. So already right off the bat, no matter what I do, if I make sure that the axle square in the chassis, it won't line up in the wheel well exactly the same on both sides. However, these are great big wheel wells compared to the tires, and it shouldn't be anything egregious as far as the way it looks. I just keep taking more and more apart, hoping it's gonna look better or something easy is gonna come to mind, and it just doesn't. Yeah. Basically at the point where I think I'm gonna just front clip this whole thing. The only thing that seems even remotely easy would be to go back here on the frame to where it's actually the width I need to be wide enough to fit through this area on the Vette suspension, which ends up being back here somewhere underneath the firewall. But we've got those mounts, although they're not in great shape or even completely used. And honestly, I think that's kind of the least of the worries. The other thing is the height, and I think where I want to end up for with ride height, we might actually want the tube completely below this, but I don't know how much I want to commit to just that. The big thing is we got a lot of up and down play as far as what'll work out. I really just want to get the darn suspension under here, set the weight on it, and then adjust as necessary. But in order to do that, I gotta cut these frames out. So I think we're just gonna end up going all the way back there. Cut wherever we're at the right width. This is about 4 inches thick. And I think I'm just gonna go straight and level. We might end up something like that once we get up to here, because I've only got 3-inch tube. So I think in order to correct that, the idea is going to be have our 3-inch. You're going to make a cut and just pick a distance out, and then I'll cut another chunk of tube and tilt it, and then we'll expand. So it will be similar to the stock frame where it tapers as it goes to the front. You can see it's smaller. but we'll just be going dead straight from back there.